Ohio State has made an offer. All that's left is for Jim Knowles to accept. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you like the show and you're a returning viewer, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you don't miss any of the segments that we upload here on the channel as we talk college football 24/7, 365 days a year. And coming out of the national championship game, one of the biggest subplots, storylines going into it for the real college football fan out there is whether or not Jim Knowles is going to sign a contract that would keep him at Ohio State. If you are an Ohio State fan, one, you thought this is a foregone conclusion, just go ahead and sign the contract. The second part is, didn't he sign an extension last year? Yeah. Did he sign one that was multi-years? Yeah, actually, it's up in January 31st, 2027. So what gives? What gives is Jim Knowles just coached a national championship defense, and it's very clear to everybody that watched football this season that if Ohio State's defense was not the kind of defense that it showed itself to be in the second half of the season, we're not talking about Ohio State winning its first national championship in a decade and its 8th in history. You want to keep the band together as long as you can, especially when you're talking about the coaching staff. Players will go in and out of the portal. That's what's going to happen. Coaches, they can leave, they can stay. It's really up to them and the people that oversee them how long they get to keep doing this job. Usually somebody's going to get fired. But Jim Knowles is the hottest assistant in college football today because of this, right? So what did Ohio State offer? Actually offered a pretty damn good deal. Michigan made Wink Martindale the highest paid defensive coordinator in all of football in 2024. He made $2.5 million to coach Michigan. And by the way, Michigan's defense was no slouch. It's pretty damn good. But Wink's background and at the Baltimore Ravens and in the NFL speaks for itself. But really, he is overseeing a defense that they put in a couple of years ago with Mike McDonald that has been really good for Michigan and has been integral to their success since 2020. You can't really talk about Michigan football without talking about the scheme that Wink Martindale invented and is now overseeing at Michigan. That's worth $2.5 million annually to you, especially if you got a first-year head coach going into his second year in Sharon Moore and you're looking to contend for the Big Ten championship. Meanwhile, Ryan Day cedes the play calling duties to his mentor, Chip Kelly, so he can become more of a CEO coach. And him being able to get involved with the defense was a big reason as to why it changed in the second half, particularly after giving up 32 points in a loss to Oregon. But also, he was able to go and have these conversations and continue to build this rapport with Jim Knowles and that defensive unit, which I think really contributed to them being great in the second half of the season, particularly in the last 4 games they played, which they needed to win all 4 of to win the national championship. So the details of the contract would make Jim Knowles the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. Right now, he is scheduled to make $2.75 million if his contract gets extended and picked up. I'm assuming that they'd add a couple of more years to that, maybe turn it into a 5-year extension. For Knowles is, saying it publicly, he said what I expect everybody to say publicly, which is that I'm coaching at Ohio State. Yeah, on Monday and Tuesday. But will you be willing to coach somewhere else is not really a follow-up that you get to ask because it's impolite to do that in such a space, especially following a national championship. It's just not the time and the place. That said, you leave a lot unsaid, and you're letting your agent do the work that your agent needs to do. What we do know is that Oklahoma had shown an interest in Jim Knowles, and Jim Knowles reportedly had shown a mutual interest in Oklahoma. You can say, and you would probably be right, that this is a negotiating tactic. You always want to have more than one bidder for your services so you can drive the number up. And I think getting to a number that makes you the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country at a place like Ohio State, where you are the defending national champion and you have the best defensive player in football returning in Caleb Downs, might be enough to make you want to stay put right where you are. But then there's some of y'all that be on the wives and girlfriends beat. I don't really particularly do it. I don't like doing it. That want to bring up where his wife is from and how that might play into his decision. I tend to think that football coaches are iterant nomads as it is, and any person that has been married to a football coach will tell you the same. You got to be ready to pick up and move at the drop of a hat. Being able to call a place home is not really something that many coaches get to do. It's why it's seen as a luxury when you do. Matter of fact, Brent Venables, when he made the move to Clemson, was very clear about, I don't want to be a guy that moves around. He made one move from Kansas State to Oklahoma. He made one move from Oklahoma to Clemson and waited damn near 10 years to make a second move to fourth move to Oklahoma, where he wants to stay and where I'm sure that he would like to finish his career, if at all possible. He would have to win a bunch of games to continue to keep that charge, because Oklahoma has had 2 losing seasons in 3 years. One of those seasons was a 10-win season, but that staff has basically been eviscerated and gone. And now we're looking at a place where Oklahoma is doing everything it can to get itself in position to contend for an SEC championship. Whether or not that's going to happen in 2025, we'll wait and see. I didn't think Indiana was going to be any good this year. They turned out to be one of the best teams in college football, with losses to the 2 teams that played in the national championship game. Everybody else on their schedule they beat in a loaded Big Ten. So anything is possible. However, the defense isn't necessarily where I would put my focus if I'm Oklahoma, for 2 reasons. 1, the defense wasn't the unit to let you down in 2024. That was the offense. 2, Brent Venables, like Jim Knowles, is one of the best defensive play callers who has ever lived. Like, that's just part of it. He is the guy. And if it comes back to it, Brent Venables might have to do what Ryan Day was doing to get Ohio State to where it was, and then to keep it there, which is be a play caller. Like, he made his bones at Ohio State as an offensive play caller, and that's why he got the job. Kept the offensive play calling privileges because everybody wanted him to, and that was in Ohio State's best interest, especially as you had a defense that was working. Jeff Hafley had that thing humming, and it was great. When Hafley went away, it turned out the guy that created that thing makes it real difficult for someone else to come in there and try to fix it. So you got to bring in somebody else's scheme, which means you bring in, after Kerry Combs, Jim Knowles, who've done outstanding things at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State got to be kicking itself or not. I don't really think they are. I think that Jim Knowles wants to be an assistant coach. I don't think he wants to be a head coach. I think that when we talk about Jim Knowles, we probably need to be talking about a guy that's not unlike Larry Johnson Sr. He's very good at his job. There's nothing wrong with being a great specialist. There really isn't. As a matter of fact, it means you're always going to be in demand. It means that the door is not closed to you. If you go do what, say, Brent Venables did, you take over an Oklahoma program and it stumbles, all of a sudden some of that shine comes off of you, especially after, you sign this huge extension to get Oklahoma through its first damn near decade of SEC competition. But then you could be Kirby Smart, where you go take over your alma mater and you turn them into a giant and you win the first national championship in 41 years. I'm not sure that that is where Jim Knowles is looking. However, I should also add in here that Oklahoma wouldn't be the only program that is pursuing Jim Knowles. And Penn State has an opening at defense coordinator. And Notre Dame has an opening at defense coordinator. I think the number of $2.75 million would make him, the highest paid defensive coordinator in football. And it's not likely that you're going to see someone overtake that with hirings at Notre Dame and Penn State, but it could be him. If you have someone that wants to pay him $3 million at one of those schools or $3 million at Oklahoma, it just depends on what it is that he wants. Really, it's all up to him at this point. And the longer it goes, the more Ohio State fans got to be like, what gives, dude? We are the best team in football. We are the biggest fan base in football. We are moneyed up. What gives? If it's another $250,000, can we do this and be done with it? I understand what you're doing. I understand what you're saying, and I believe you. Like, I'm with you. I think the best play for Jim Knowles is to stay at Ohio State and go nowhere else. That said, it ain't up to you. It ain't up to me. It's up to him, and he has yet to say something, but when he does, we will talk about it.